Help support the North Omaha History Podcast by going to northomahahistory.com/podcast. Click on the Patreon icon and become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And we'd like to thank Jim Collison, Wanda Lewis, and Lori Schwartz for being patrons.
Welcome to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sasse. Each week, Adam takes you on a guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.
Hidden deep in the heart of North Omaha is a jewel of a street filled with abundant American foursquare houses, long yards, and hints of its glory 100 years ago. The section of Wirt Street from North 16th to North 24th was once home to some of the predominant names in the beautiful Kountze Place development. It was also home to more than simple foursquares. In addition to the stout middle-class houses, there were some exquisite examples of high style in Omaha history. Adam, tell us more.
Steve, imagine one street packed with business managers, lawyers, politicians, all kinds of important people in Omaha's upper middle class. One street with 3-story houses, with beautiful churches, with abundant businesses. One street with access to streetcars, one street that inspired the Trans-Mississippi Exposition to be right next door. That is Wirt Street in North Omaha in the 1890s. I mean, this thing was packed to the hilt with beautiful Queen Anne-style houses, neoclassical columns, tall towers, all kinds of extravagance. And that street is still there right now. It's a super cool, super beautiful place. I'm really excited to share its history. Imagine North Omaha. Back in the olden days, we've talked about this idea of Kountze Place actually being built on a plain. It was a big, broad plain. And, you already had some famous people who were living in that area. You had John Reddick. He was a lawyer in Omaha. He had a beautiful mansion with a huge orchard. You had J.J. Brown, who was an early businessman in the city, made his money off of warehousing downtown, and had a beautiful mansion right over there. You had all these other characters who were right around in that area in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s. And during that time period, these were kind of country estates. But when that neighborhood starts to fill in, when Augustus Kountze puts his Kountze Place subdivision, when he puts those lots up for sale, he lays down these beautiful roads, puts in sidewalks, old-fashioned gas lamps, and plants trees everywhere. And the houses start coming in, and they just plug these empty lots along the street, just like any development in West Omaha today, but even better because they were in North Omaha, and even better because at that point, early on, Wirt Street was part of a streetcar subdivision, Omaha's first streetcar subdivision that was substantial, that really had people moving in for the excitement of living there. So along this street, you have these just gorgeous houses immediately getting built up. And so many things were going on. I can't tell you about all the turrets. I can't tell you about all the Romanesque revival kinds of details, or all the fancy porches and wonderful verandas and wraparound orchards and all kinds of beautiful things going on. But the important thing to know is that each of these homes was exquisite and was thought of really well. Today, we still have several of these houses that are actually still standing. One of them is called the George Shepherd House. It was built in 1887 by a stonemason. And this guy was one of Omaha's leading stone workers. He had a whole company, had a whole flock of men working for him. So he built his fine house at 1802 18th and Wirt Streets, right there on the corner. And this thing is gorgeous. It has a rounded wraparound porch on the front end. The whole entire house is made of stone, and it's all finely carved. Today, looking at the outside of it, you can see these details in the stone, and just it's almost got a faux lattice wraparound on this porch that's made out of stone. The roof on the house, the roof line on the house is just exquisite in its own. Got a gorgeous turret that shoots up into the sky, and enough can't be said about this house. 5 bedrooms. It's got over 4,400 square feet in it, so it's a huge house. And it's actually the biggest one on Wirt Street today. They talked about it being Beaux Arts, meaning that it kind of had this French detailing to it, and just it's all really well kept now, and just looks wonderful. The homeowner is very dedicated to keeping the house looking that exquisite as well. Another house that's really remarkable on Wirt Street is just right across the street. It's at 1805 Wirt. And when you look at this, it's like looking at a neoclassical temple, like a Grecian temple from the olden days. Has 2-story columns shooting up the front end and this beautiful triangular cornice that covers up the porch. It's a brick house and just shaped really, really well. It's got 3,300 square feet and dark brown brick around the whole entire house, along with those colonnades on the front. It's got this nice little wraparound porch it's not pretentious. It just kind of blends in with the house. And some years the owners let this beautiful ivy cover the front, and other years they strip it off and give it a really kind of plain. And again, it's so nice to look at as it is. It sits on a really wide green lawn, and the house is really well upkept. One of the most interesting houses on Wirt Street was the David Cole house. It was built at 1812 Wirt. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous house. Today, the house is still there, but it doesn't have a lot of these neoclassical elements that were originally there. Another house that does, though, is at 2210 Wirt. This is an 1893 house. Solid red brick. It looks like something out of the beautiful pioneer era of Omaha. And honestly, it's just got all these gorgeous elements going on. Again, another wraparound veranda that's made out of wood that has some nice elements on it that really stick out, give it a really distinct kind of Victorian feel. But really the highlight of this house is this beautiful turret that's right on the southeast corner of the house. They have it painted green, and it just pops because of all the trim around the rest of the house being green as well. But with that red brick and kind of, there's also white siding, some fish scale siding, and it is just gorgeous. I mean, this house is something else. It's got some Italianate brackets and some flourished windows, tall windows like you'd expect in the Wild West, and was definitely one of the premier houses in its day, and still is. So when you had all these managers moving into Wirt Street, when you had all these important people in Omaha history moving into Wirt Street, they were really looking to, everybody wanted their own house. They wanted their own distinguishing house. 2120 Wirt Street is a Dutch colonial revival house. It's got what's called a cross gable roof. So it's like a barn-shaped roof, but there's 2 of them, and they crisscross, right? So you have the front end that looks like a barn, and then you have the sides that look like a barn, but beautiful little rounded dormers that stick out of it. And it has such a feeling of prominence, nice columns holding up the front porch, beautiful symmetry on the front side of the house. And it's just a gorgeous house to look at. It also has a huge lawn, and the owners obviously care about it, love it a lot. But, one of the real jewels along Wirt Street still standing today is called the Van Court House. It's at 1902 Wirt, and it has a 4-story tower on the southeast corner of the house. A nice symmetrical tower that kind of hints at a Scandinavian kind of taste, flavor, style. And the rest of the house has a lot of geometric shapes. It's, again, another beautiful wraparound porch. If it sounds like Wirt Street is filled with wraparound porches, that's because it is. And also, this house has a magnificent lawn on it. There are a couple houses along Wirt that are on the National Register of Historic Places, and then several others that have been designated official Omaha landmarks by the City of Omaha's Landmark Heritage Planning Commission. One of them is the Charles Stortz house. Charles Stortz was the son of the founder of the brewery, the Stortz Brewery, and he built his house at 19th and Wirt. It's on the southwest corner of the street there, and it's this beautiful, gigantic 2.5-story arts and crafts style house. Now, arts and crafts style is not the same as craftsman. A lot of people in Omaha use those synonymously, but they're not quite the same because arts and crafts is really very English. It's got a lot of beautiful woodwork that was hand done for this house specifically. So when we talk about arts and crafts houses, they're really a tier above craftsmen, because craftsman style houses were generally done en masse. They were mass produced, or they still have a lot of beautiful elements, and I don't want to diminish or take away anything from them. But this arts and crafts style house is spectacular. It's very symmetrical in the main house area. Got a very large wraparound porch that adds some asymmetry to it, and gives it some off balance. It's very nice. And again, one of these beautiful, gorgeous lawns. But looking at this house is almost like looking at an English feeling manse. I mean, it's just a very large, very strong, very well-proportioned house. That 2.5 stories just looks spectacular. It stands above and beyond everybody else. And then it has this really cool little bay window on the second floor that draws the eye right to the middle of the house and just gives it that, special feeling. The porch is a wide and broad porch, and it just screams for a swinging chair. It screams for people just sitting out front and enjoying the beautiful beauty of the house. And this is definitely one of the, again, featured houses along Wirt Street. In the 1980s, the group that became Restoration Exchange Omaha was responsible for sponsoring the restoration of this house and making sure that it got in the hands of somebody who would love and care for it. And that's definitely happened since then. So props to them for that good work. Some of Wirt Street's finest houses have actually been lost, though, Steve. One of them was a mansion that was located at 2018 Wirt. And this mansion has its own magnificent story that I would love to tell sometime. But long story short, it was built by Omaha's pioneer postman. His name was Alfred Jones. And Jones was a spectacular guy. He did all kinds of things. He also did some heinous things. It was the early days of Omaha back in the 1850s. But by the 1890s, he wanted his own place. He wanted to make it spectacular. And he built it in Kountze Place along Wirt Street. This mansion had 10 rooms. It had to have been more than 5,000 square feet. He had a 10-acre fruit orchard around it. And he really did a lot of work when he built it in 1891. After the Trans-Mississippi Exposition happened in 1898, literally next door to this house, the notorious Omaha Madame Anna Wilson bought it. And she lived there in 1906, from 1906 to 1911 when she passed away. She actually donated the house to old folks' home and wanted it to be an old folks' home. It had, let me describe the house. 3.5 stories, solid, beautiful tall turret towers sticking out of the corner, magnificent wraparound porch that looked out over a broad lawn in its later years, huge carriage house with his Romanesque revival features. The whole house had these, which were like rough-hewn stone arches and big, broad wraparound bands of solid white stone on this dark brick house. Huge, beautiful carved columns on the front and sides of the house. Just a magnificent thing to look at. So Wilson, when she died, she donated more than $1 million to charities around the city. And one of them was this Omaha old folks home. Well, the old folks home ended up selling the mansion. Later on, it became fraternity and all kinds of different things. And it was only torn down in the 80s, but a spectacular place, early 80s, but it was a spectacular house. And, there's lots of other things going on along Wirt Street. One of the saddest things to do today, and I still kind of force myself to do it, is take a look at what used to be. 2117 Wirt Street is an old, beautiful old 1890 Victorian. It was built as this magnificent Queen Anne style house with East Lake detailing, which means lots of wood, lots of intricate carvings, lots of different details on it. And this house was just gorgeous to look at. I have a comparison photo on the article on NorthOmahaHistory.com. There were hip roofs, there were thick porches, there was beautiful yard. The whole entire house had 3,000 square feet. I mean, it was just magnificent. But today, to look at it, I mean, the house is barely there. It's bones compared to what it once was. You can see that somebody wants to make it good again, but so much is missing from its original form. It would take a lot of work and time to put it back to what it used to be. And then there are other stories and places that are still being torn down along Wirt Street. One of the houses that I'm glad to say still exists was designed by an architect named George Lee Fisher. And Fisher designed a lot of magnificent places in North Omaha and all around Omaha. But this 1887 house was built at 1907 Wirt Street and was next door to the Charles Stort's house. So Stort's thought highly enough of this specific house to really build his next door mansion. Pretty spectacular place. And it's just a great place to be. There are lots of other stories along Wirt Street and things that are definitely worth highlighting. But I think that's a pretty good introduction to some of the beauty that's there. I have a full article with a lot of pictures on it on NorthOmahaHistory.com, all about the magnificence that was Wirt Street. And I'd invite anybody to take a look at that.
Thanks for listening to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sasse. Join us next week as Adam takes you on another guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.